The first thing Daniel Ross heard was not the wind howling over the frozen mountains. It was a sound so faint, so out of place, that it made him stop dead in his tracks, a small, stuttering cry, almost like someone calling for help, but muffled, desperate, and fading fast. The snowstorm was merciless, swallowing every shape and sound. Visibility was barely a few feet. Daniel's boots crunched on the icy bridge as he turned his head, scanning the swirling white void. He couldn't see a soul. But then, there it was again. A whimper. Closer now. His pulse quickened. 100 thoughts flashed through his mind, a hurt animal, a trick of the wind, or something much worse. And then he saw it, a tiny figure curled against the guardrail, half buried in snow, unmoving except for the trembling of small shoulders. For a split second, Daniel froze. This wasn't just a lost child. Out here, in this weather, she was dying. Daniel dropped the small grocery bag he had been carrying and rushed forward, his boots slipping on ice. Kneeling, he brushed away the snow to reveal a little girl, maybe 6 years old, her thin pink jacket soaked through, fingers bare and raw from the cold. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue, and her tear tracks had frozen against her cheeks. "Hey, it's okay," Daniel said, his voice gentle but urgent. "What's your name?" She shivered violently, barely able to speak. Sophie." "All right, Sophie, I'm Daniel. I'm gonna get you somewhere warm, okay? But I need you to stay awake." He ripped off his scarf and wrapped it around her neck, then shrugged out of his heavy coat and swaddled her in it. The cold slammed into him instantly, but he ignored it. Scooping her into his arms, he began trudging down the bridge toward the small gas station he knew was a quarter-mile away. The wind fought him with every step, snowflakes slicing like glass against his face. Sophie's small hands clutched weakly at his shirt. "You're gonna be okay," he kept telling her, even as his lungs burned and his legs felt like lead. "Just a little further." By the time he kicked open the gas station door, his lips were numb, and Sophie's head was lolling on his shoulder. The blast of heat inside was almost painful against his frozen skin. "Call 911. Daniel barked. The young cashier jumped into action, grabbing the phone while Daniel set Sophie down and rubbed her arms to keep the blood flowing. Within minutes, the wail of sirens grew louder outside. 2 paramedics rushed in, checked her vitals, and wrapped her in a silver thermal blanket. As they carried her toward the ambulance, Daniel stood off to the side, catching his breath. He didn't need thanks, only to know she would survive. One of the paramedics turned to him. "What's your name, sir? Her family's going to want to know who saved her." Daniel shook his head. "Doesn't matter." The storm had worsened when he stepped back outside. He walked home, teeth chattering, snow crunching underfoot. His tiny one-room cabin welcomed him with silence and cold. The heater had broken days ago, and he hadn't had the money to fix it. He collapsed into bed without even removing his boots. The knock came just after sunrise. Groggy, Daniel shuffled to the door, pulling it open to reveal a tall man in a black wool coat, flanked by 2 others in tailored suits. Behind them, a sleek black limousine gleamed in the snow. "Mr. Ross?" the man asked. Daniel nodded slowly. "My name is Richard Davenport," the man said, extending a gloved hand. "You found my daughter last night." Daniel blinked. "Sophie." "Yes. My wife and I have been searching all night to find the man who carried her through a blizzard. May we come in?" Daniel hesitated, glancing at the state of his cabin, cracked walls, peeling paint, the cold air seeping through, but stepped aside. Richard entered, followed by the others. He was the kind of man whose presence seemed to fill a room, tall, broad-shouldered, with an air of quiet authority. "You didn't just help her," Richard said. "The doctors told us if Sophie had been out there another 15 minutes, she wouldn't have survived." Daniel swallowed. "I just couldn't walk away." Richard's expression softened. "I want you to come with me." My wife and Sophie want to thank you personally. Daniel started to decline, but something in Richard's tone told him this wasn't a request. He grabbed his threadbare coat, and minutes later, he was sitting in the warm leather interior of the limousine. When they reached the Davenport estate, Daniel was stunned. The driveway stretched longer than any road in his part of town, lined with snow-covered trees. The mansion itself looked like something out of a movie, tall white columns, wide windows spilling golden light into the cold morning. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and wood smoke. A woman in an elegant sweater stood by the fireplace, and Sophie sat curled on the couch, bundled in a thick blanket. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Danny," she squealed, running to him. He knelt, smiling. "Hey, kiddo. You feeling better?" She nodded, gripping his hand. The woman approached, tears in her eyes. "You saved our baby. We can't repay that, but we want to try." Daniel shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." Richard stepped forward. "Maybe not. But I own several companies, and I can offer you a job, a good one. Also, our guest house is empty. It's yours if you want it." Daniel stared at him. "Why me?" Richard's voice was steady. "Because you risked your life for a stranger's child. That tells me everything I need to know." The weeks that followed felt unreal. Daniel moved into the guest house, warm, bright, with more space than he'd ever had. He began working at one of Davenport Enterprises' distribution centers, where his leadership skills quickly stood out. But the greatest change was Sophie. She would come to the guest house almost every day after school, bringing drawings, telling him stories, and asking endless questions about his life. Slowly, she pulled him into a family he never thought he'd have. Then one evening, Richard called Daniel into his study. "I've been watching you," Richard said, smiling faintly. "You're more than an employee now. I'd like to promote you, and give you a stake in the company." Daniel was speechless. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Richard said simply. "Because good people who expect nothing deserve everything." Years later, Daniel would look back on that snowstorm and realize something. The night he found Sophie, he thought he was saving her life. But in truth, she had saved his.